Welcome to Just Talk Funerals with me, Jason Threadgold.
And me, Nicola Threadgold.
Just Talk Funerals is all about the funeral industry, the people that work alongside us, and an insight into what we do.
We will have some special guests along the way, sharing their experiences and how their professions overlap with what we do.
So get yourselves comfy, grab yourselves a cuppa, and let's get into today's episode of
Just Talk Funerals.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. So today we're going to be talking about people who lead funeral services. So whether that be celebrants, ministers, officiants, who's that person that looks after you as a family or friends of somebody that have passed away, and who is it that's going to lead you through this process of a funeral? So we're going to talk a little bit about religious officiants to start with. So people will call them vicars, ministers, call them what you will, but that tends to angle more towards sort of your Church of England and your Methodist communities. But there's so many different religious leaders out there that are officiating over funeral services, and we're in such a really diverse, multicultural community nowadays that we need to be in touch with all these ministers. So, I mean, you've got all sorts. So you've got your Sikh community, your Hindus, you've got Jewish communities, there's your Christian communities, there's all sorts, and Buddhist as well even. So for us to know the ins and outs of what all these ministers expect of us and expect a service to be like or be built up like, there's a lot of knowledge there, and we need to know a lot about these communities. So really we're going to talk a little bit, I think today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Catholic community, and we have a really close connection with our Catholic community to us locally, and the priests that work alongside us, some of them are real characters over the years. I mean, here in Brigg we used to have Canon Ma. He was so entertaining and everybody loved him, even though he may well nod off occasionally and make out that he's contemplating. But he was a really jolly old man, and I had this one occasion where he never drove. You know, I don't know, and I don't think you ever met him, did you?
No.
But he never drove, and he had a nun looked after him. And when we had a funeral service, it was part of the agreement that we would collect him and take him to these services.
I knew you was going to say that, yeah.
And I turned up this one day in good time, and maybe a little bit earlier than I was expected. And he comes running out with his napkin tucked in his shirt, and said, "We can't go yet, I've not had my pudding." And it was just little things like that you think, it really breaks the ice. We're going to a really solemn occasion, and he's so funny and so warm and welcoming. But then when you get him into the funeral setting, oh my word, totally different. Yeah, he was extremely serious about what he was there for, his religious beliefs, the following, and everybody hung off every single word that he said, even through communion and a full requiem mass, which can sometimes take up to an hour and a half. He held that congregation for such a long time. So the Catholic community, he was my entry into the Catholic community probably 30 odd years ago. Nowadays, I've mentioned we have this real close connection with the Catholic community, and we do a lot with them, sort of out of funerals as well, with catering and such forth. They all seem to be very pleasant people. They never seem bothered. They don't seem like they're stressed at any time. I've never seen that from any of the ministry, and they take everything in the stride. Now, I don't know how they manage to do that, because we all know we can all get a little anxious or stressed at times. I can't think I've ever seen a Catholic priest getting stressed over anything.
Yeah. But don't you think it's interesting? You talk about the Catholics, but then, you know, and we are very privileged to work with many different, you know, religions, and they are all very fascinating, aren't they? I mean, when I came into to the funeral home, obviously I'd been working at the crematorium for many years and had seen a snapshot of, the different religions and the different ministers. But coming into a funeral home, you are working with them a lot more closely. And, the Hindu and the Sikh communities, I mean, they're fascinating because, again, they are such a community, aren't they? The Muslims, and we get on very well with the Muslims, don't we? And, I think it's great that we do have this amazing collaboration where there's a respect on both sides. We know what they want. If we don't, they very quickly tell us. And, there's times when you feel like you're being educated because, we maybe don't understand their religion as much as we maybe should. But, it's all about striving for that perfect funeral for that person, isn't it? Mm. So we all work really well together to achieve that. But it is fascinating, understanding how, their services and how they look at death as well, which is very different, sometimes to the Christian way, isn't it? Mm.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to these Islamic funerals, a lot of the preparation is done by the families themselves.
Yeah.
And you may well have an imam involved in that as well, which is a religious leader in the Muslim community. They will come along and get involved in the physical elements of preparing that person for the funeral rites and for the funeral itself.
Yeah.
And they're all so very different in how they treat their emotions towards religion and gods. We'll call them gods because we're talking about the religious context here.
Yeah.
It's all a god, and they choose to do it so differently.
Yeah.
Whereas the Christians, a lot is done for them, and it is sort of a process in line where everybody follows that. Whereas you move into the Islamic kind of things, and they want to be involved. It's the physical involvement, and the teachings of the Quran tell them that they should be doing this, and it also parts of that tell them through the process, especially for burial, for Muslim, what that does for you as a person and for your soul and for the soul of that other person that's passed away.
Yeah, definitely. I think our relationships as well, with the different sort of ministers and officiants, and different cultures, it certainly helped as we've gone along that we've over the 11 years, we've gone to other things, haven't we, where we've supported them, whether it's been open days, and they've invited us into, their different places of worship. And I think that helps us understand more, doesn't it, as to what is expected and just talking with the community, isn't it?
I think so. And the more knowledge we get, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah.
And we generally learn things every time. Much as we can know the teachings inside out, every community in different areas may well do things just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And that side of the religious service for us is great knowledge for us, and we do take that on board. But not every service is necessarily a religious service, is it?
No, absolutely not. And that leads us nicely onto celebrants, doesn't it? Civil celebrants who are, and we've seen a very big shift towards civil celebrants, haven't we, over the years? Whereas, it was always expected that a minister or somebody through the church would be the person that would officiate a funeral. We're now looking at civil celebrants who are people that have come into this sort of line of work where they're here to officiate, but not in a religious way. So you don't have to have any sort of connotations towards religion. You don't have to have any hymns. You don't have to have any prayers. Or it can be a semi-religious service where you might want one prayer but nothing else. So you've got a very big choice all of a sudden as to the type of service that you would want. And these types of services and what the civil celebrant will do is when they meet with a family, they will draw out everything around that person and making that service more like a ceremony, and it's about the life stories and the memories of that person, isn't it? So it's quite modern in its approach in a sense, isn't it?
I think so, and I think you touched on it nicely there about it can or it can't be religious.
Yeah.
I mean, civil celebrants it's not saying do away with religion,
No.
but it's maybe just roll back on it a little bit,
Yeah.
and perhaps, like you say, have a prayer or a reading,
Yeah.
but it's more about the person.
Yeah.
So we all know that if you're having a funeral service and you're using a traditional crematorium, say for instance, or church, you're kind of limited on the amount of time the service is going to take.
Yeah.
Part of that in a religious service is obviously you're going to be preached to by a minister, because that's their beliefs, that's their thoughts. They are going to want to put that across to you.
Yeah.
But civil celebrants, that's different. So you can rein back on that a little bit, and you get so much more time to talk about the person and those around them that have passed away.
Yeah. I think also what's interesting in a civil sort of ceremony is the music. Having worked at the crematorium, and again there was that shift in terms of your very traditional sort of music that would be played, whereas as soon as like civil ceremonies came in where, you've got the celebrant, that opens up a whole different sort of ball game towards music. And, some of the music in today's society, if you like, is probably not like it was for me in the 80s. There's probably a bit more swearing. It's a very much more diverse type of music, and that is allowed, isn't it?
But don't you think that's sort of testament to the person whose funeral it is?
Yeah.
When you start looking at their kind of music and what they think they would want to listen to.
Yeah.
It's all about personalising that service. And
Yeah.
by using a celebrant, I know you've mentioned there's maybe swearing occasionally in it. Perhaps you're not going to use that kind of music in a religious service, because it'd be frowned upon, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Whereas in a civil celebrant service, then they're going to allow much more freedom when it comes to that sort of thing.
Well, it's expression of that person, isn't it? And, and again, I think we find more where a younger person has passed away, there is that expression to want to show exactly how that person lived. Because if they're young, then the type of music and the type of life they've led is going to be very modern in comparison to maybe having a church service, depending on what families' beliefs are. But there is more of a choice when it comes to the celebrant side, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think if you were probably to do a study nowadays, look at sort of percentages of how many services are led by civil celebrants, you're probably going to be looking, I would think, at least around the half.
I would think
50% are civil celebrants now.
Yeah.
There's lots of other types of celebrants, but I would think 50 for the civils.
Yeah. And I think that's where you've touched on other celebrants, because we start to then look at a humanist, don't we? And I think when we've spoken to people and sort of given them the choices of, a civil celebrant, or they've mentioned a humanist, I don't think they've always understood the difference.
No, a lot of people have come to us and said, we want a humanist to take the service.
Yeah.
And then we have to start talking to them about the reasoning behind that and why that is. But then you may be part way through your conversation and say, but we still want the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And in a humanist service, that's just not... You can't mention gods at all, because it's just not a thing for the humanist community.
Yeah. So can you explain in more detail then around a humanist celebrant and what difference they bring?
Okay, so a humanist, like I've alluded to, that you're not going to be talking about God at all. It's all going to be very much like a civil celebrant service, but there's not the option there to bring any form of religion whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because a humanist belief are more so like the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So there wasn't this God that created an earth. We evolved from animals. So that would be part of the humanist belief. So you just really can't talk about religion. That's the marked difference between the two.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, again, it's also worth noting, with religious officiants, they are accountable to the church, aren't they? With a civil celebrant, more often than not, they are accountable to they have like a governing body, don't they? Like Celebrants UK. And I must say, within the work that we do, we always ask that question of all our celebrants, if they are a member of that and what certificates they have passed.
Yeah, I guess for many different reasons, really. And one reason, I guess, is the fact that we need to make sure that these people are insured, for number one. If you go to a Church of England minister, obviously they're going to be covered by ecclesiastical. But if you're going to a third-party provider who's independent, then you need to make sure they've got everything in place. Because the last thing you want is something happening during the service. Say, for instance, they don't turn up, they say something out of turn, and just something goes wrong that's not right. There needs to be a recourse there somewhere and somebody that they're accountable to.
And obviously Humanist Celebrants, they are part of Humanist UK as well. So
there's lots of different bodies,
okay. And what about independent celebrants?
I mean, an independent celebrant is very much like a human. It's like a halfway house between a civil celebrant and a humanist. So very relaxed services, very friendly services, giving you much more time to talk about the person as opposed to being preached to. But they don't tend to mention anything to do with prayers or readings. That's you wouldn't tell the difference really, I don't think, unless somebody pointed it out to you, the difference between a civil celebrant and a private celebrant.
Okay. So that leads us on nicely to the fact that actually, choice-wise, you don't have to choose any of those, do you?
Nope.
You know, and sometimes we do have families, and I think it's very brave, but, you know, families that say, well, I want to stand up and do it.
Yeah, and I mean, in a couple of episodes back, we had Penny in, didn't we? And she was talking about leading her own father's funeral. Different for her in one sense because she was within that sort of industry where she delivered a funeral service before. But I think you're right. I think if somebody does feel brave enough to be able to stand there and deliver a service about their loved one, how much more personal can you get than that? So they know, you'd like to think they know everything about them. I'm sure they probably don't. There'll be some surprises along the way that others fill in them gaps. Bringing a third-party provider in to officiate over a service is great, and some of them really can get under the skin of the family and get to know them and deliver beautiful services. But on the flip side, who better than somebody that you're related to, so long as you've got that way of holding your emotion. The last thing we want you to do is put yourself in that position and then you break down part way through the service.
I don't think we would ever, as much as that could happen, we would always be there, wouldn't we? You know, our funeral directors are trained that if a family member was reciting or reading out or talking to the congregation, they got to a point where they just couldn't do it anymore through emotion, then our funeral director could step up to complete that for them, couldn't they?
Sorry, Nicola. It's always about being proactive. And making sure you've got a backup there and a fallback.
Definitely.
So especially when it's going to be a family-led funeral, we would like to, if possible, just us, nobody else, get a copy of the script that perhaps they're going to be using. And then if the worst came to the worst and the emotion became too much, then we could step in and take on that role.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess while we're talking about that as well, and it brings to mind that, you know, there has been some funerals where, you know, the wishes of the deceased or the family member is that because they've got to know us as funeral directors, they've asked either you or George to actually officiate the funeral, haven't you?
Yeah, it won't be the first time. I've done many services myself.
Yeah.
Everybody has choices, and we're not going to force a minister on somebody.
No.
And if they really want us to do it, then we're never going to say no to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you about a cheeky little story, though, about a family that did actually ask me to do this on one occasion, but they wanted me to say the Lord's Prayer. Now, I mean, I know the Lord's Prayer in and out. I've said it since I'm at school. It's one of them things that you just don't forget. However, put a couple of other factors in the room when you're doing this, and it was coming to the point where we're having the committal at the end of the cremation service. Very small congregation. I mean, very small. There was less than 10. But in this 10 was a nun. And this isn't a joke. And I was reciting the Lord's Prayer, and I happened to look at this nun whilst I was reciting it. And I don't know how or why, the words just went.
She put a spell on you, Jess.
I don't know what had happened, but It took me like what seemed like an hour, but it was a millisecond, and she kind of sort of got me back on track. And I finished it, but I don't know why I mentioned that, but it's one of them things. Things happen
They do.
in services, and it's how you adapt to them and how you sort of move forward from.
Yeah. And in fact, as you're talking again, I've thought of something else as well that, I know we've been asked to do it and it's happened, where we've actually had a lady who was quite poorly, and you went to see her, didn't you, to arrange the funeral, and you actually recorded her.
I have, yeah.
And she spoke to the congregation, didn't she?
Yeah. I'm not going to go too far with this because this lady is still with us, thankfully. But we have this recording of her and something that she wants to say to her two daughters at the point where she passes away. And she's sworn me to secrecy until the point where we actually meet with the family and tell them, as part of this service, Mum has a recording.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she's going to make them aware of it prior to her passing away.
Yeah.
But we've got that on record for when anything does happen.
I mean, that's very emotional, but very special, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get more in the funeral industry with the enhancements with AI and things like that. I think you'll start seeing things happening in the next few years where people will be at their own services. That's my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
So, kind of wrapping things up on this, if you had lost somebody had passed away, and you were looking at choosing somebody, what would be the right questions that you should be asking to be able to get the right person for your loved one?
Well, I think, I would like to think a bit like we do as we speak and we arrange a funeral and we speak with the family or we speak with the person prior to them passing away. You get a feel, don't you, for the type of person they are. And because we work with quite a few different celebrants, ministers, different officiants, you start to understand, first of all, probably what their beliefs are in terms of, whether you're going to have a minister or you're looking at a celebrant. You then have to, if it is celebrant-led, you would then look at the options of type of celebrant. And then I think, you start to speak with them around, their lifestyle, what the wishes are. And it's sort of, you start to understand actually which celebrant is sort of the right one for them. We do have male and female, and I know we always ask, would you prefer a male or a female? Because I think that's really important to ask that question when it comes to the celebrant side. Obviously, when it's a church, most people know the church, don't they? So they would know which minister most of the time that it would be taking that service. So I think, as much of, I think a lot of people maybe don't have an idea unless they've had other funerals prior, in which case they may say, well, I want the same person that did Granny's funeral, wouldn't they? But it is as the conversations flow, you do get the gist of where that choice is going to be made and where it's going to come from.
Yeah, and I think skipping back a little bit there, I know we've talked a little bit more about celebrants than religious ministers here, but it used to be a thing where if you live within the parish of a church, that was where you had to hold your funeral service, if you're having a religious service. I know especially the Church of England have relaxed this a lot over the last few years, and you can choose to use another church that's out of your parish, and so long as the incumbent, the minister who's there, is receptive of that, then it opens up this whole different space. So say for instance you're in a village with a church that only holds 30 people, yet there's going to be 300 people coming to the service, then the church are open to using these bigger churches in the towns and cities to allow that to be facilitated. Yeah,
I think things have become more flexible, especially around the church, because they've got they have realised that changes have come and they've got to change with those changes, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, it used to be really rigid. Nowadays, it is very relaxed in the fact that it's all about choices to people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So, the rise in personalised funerals in the UK. I know we've talked about formal religion, light-hearted, reflective and that. If you were, I'm putting you on the spot here,
Oh dear.
if you were choosing a funeral for yourself,
Yeah.
what path do you think you would go down?
That's interesting. I think nowadays, if I could have everybody, because I've got to know so many people within the church, celebrants, and it's really hard, isn't it? Because everybody is so lovely and we get on so well with everybody. But I think, just a service of, of remembrance of my life, really, a celebration. And I think prior to being in the funeral industry, I would have probably just said a church service to the crematorium, cremation. But I am very different to that now, because my eyes have been opened to everything. And I think, but I would definitely want a funeral service of some kind with it more of an element of colour and celebration.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think off the back of this, to wrap things up, we would always encourage people to have conversations prior to somebody passing away. Try and figure out what type of service you're looking for, and whether you're pre-arranging, prepaying a funeral service, get something in print so at least your family know what sort of thing you would like, and then they can blend that in together with what they want to celebrate your life as. Yeah,
and we realise they're not easy conversations sometimes, aren't they?
No.
You don't want to be talking to your parents about when, the time comes. But, it's so much better, isn't it, to have an understanding of what their wishes would be, rather than not to know and be sat with a funeral director not really knowing which road to go down in terms of officiants, what type of funeral.
Yeah, and I think a prime example of that is
you.
Me.
Yeah.
I thought I knew everything that would need to happen with my parents, but how wrong was I?
Yeah, very wrong.
I thought we would follow the route with my grandparents, but my parents are very specific about what they want to happen. And it was a conversation I didn't want to have.
Yeah.
But I am so glad I had it.
Yeah.
So now we know everything, and we've worked out the finest details that you can on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap that up for today. Thank you, Nicola.
You're welcome.
And thank you for
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Just Talk Funerals.
We really care about what you think. We love your feedback on the subjects raised today. Or maybe you have a question you would like us to talk about in a future episode. You can contact us by emailing podcast@threadgoldfunerals.com.
If you'd like to know more about what we do and the services we offer, then please head to jasonthreadgoldfuneraldirector.com. Thank you for joining us today, and see you next time.